Cool. Well, we'll just let people start trickling in. Welcome to the Art of Pricing. I am your host, Talia. Today, we are going to be talking about event pricing. And whenever we talk about events, we're talking about football, music festivals. Why is that the only two events I can think of in my head? But we'll get more into that more. We have Lee and Jill Thompson from Clemson Vacation Rentals down in South Carolina. And we have Jordan, who is our revenue analyst and revenue manager at Rented. Jordan has really got a special niche figuring out the projections of what rates should be for certain times, especially in event pricing, because he really likes to get dirty and dig into the data with everything. In Clemson, if you're not familiar with it, Clemson is very popular when it comes to football. Football is completely, maybe that's why it's the only thing that's in my head right now, is completely what drives your entire booking season almost, right?
For the fall, yes. For the general sports with the university, yeah, but football's our big one.
And graduation and just anything around the university in general is what it sounds like. When we're gonna like dive into like how they, Jill and Lee come up with their rates, but I want everyone to think, whenever you're thinking about all the ideas that they're giving us, it is way more, the suggestions they're giving pertain to way more than just football. And it kept everything we talked about was like, wow, this is crazy. So whenever it comes to football, we will, how like share your story on how you've had to set the wheel for pricing in your area.
So it just kind of varies. So basically the football schedule, they kind of hold on to it. I don't know if it's a marketing ploy or what they do, but they kind of dangle it out in front of us and they kind of drop it slowly to us, and they kind of roll out the game designations a little bit after that. So it's kind of the slow roll of when they release the dates and when kind of we get that full schedule in front of us. So,
and that's kind of what we were talking about, is if anybody's like, music junkies around here too, it sounded like when I'm waiting for like all of a sudden the tickets to drop and what the price is going to be like on some kind of music festival or concert, it's exactly what they do to you guys for football. That's crazy.
People are just waiting to book
it's
at
like
their computer.
They'll announce that concert schedule, but they might not give you the dates yet. So you're really excited about that artist coming to town, but you don't know that exact weekend yet. It's maybe in June, but you're just waiting to find out which weekend it is. So it's kind of, it pertains to a lot of markets for sure.
Yeah. And so there was one other thing that we had talked about that. So it's like, it's waiting. So y'all sit there and y'all wait for the music, to drop, wait for the ball to drop. I mean, however, no pun intended in any of this. And because it's a factor of, you have to figure out what games or what weekends, who are they playing, right? Because I was talking to my husband this morning, who's a big football fan, and not every weekend is the same price. So you can't even start to even gauge what the pricing will be. So how do you guys set that pricing before it's launched?
So in order to make sure that we capture everything in bookings, we don't, first of all, allow bookings more than 365 days out. But for our Clemson properties that are heavily football, we block all the fall weekends off. And I'm sure for some people that sounds crazy, but if someone sees that football schedule before we've had a chance to go in and flip our prices, and they book at our norm, what we would call our base rate, then we're just
right.
So we have to protect those weekends until we know the schedule, and then open them back up with the correct pricing.
And for you guys, that really does make sense, right? Because the demand's going to come for football. These properties are going to be booked for football. So if they're blocked today, there's no concern of, are they going to book, right? They're going to book, right? But now the concern is to make sure they're booking at the right price. Jordan, we were kind of talking about this on like a different perspective, and I love different perspectives. How you said, I don't know if you specifically price for football, but how have you priced for events?
So I have actually priced for football before. I mean, I've priced for a bunch of different events. Usually, it could be anything from parades. It could be like other sporting events, of course, artists, especially in like urban centers, like, if Lady Gaga or, whoever is coming into town, like you're going to get premiums, or at least you should price that. I prefer to be on the safer side. I want guests to be able to book whenever. for the properties that I price, but I understand like, and you just have to, you can either block it out. Personally, I prefer to just raise prices and,
Up the rate.
like give guests the opportunity to pay that price if they want at that time in the event of that event. If that makes sense. And they, if that event doesn't actually happen, it depends on, of course, on like the property managers, like refund policies. But like I was supposed to, have my graduation last year in Washington State, but that didn't happen because of COVID. So I had paid an exorbitant price for hotels for my family, but ended up having to get a refund because, well, graduation didn't happen, but
Okay.
still got the degree. So
That's what matters, right?
right.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
as long as you have the refund policy there, and I think that one thing when we were talking yesterday is like there really is not the correct way. Like whenever Lee and Joe were explaining to me how they did it, and then Jordan dug into how he did it. It's like both ways work and they make sense. Like they both are like aha moments if they make sense or not. I would be interested to know, like on like the football side, maybe the way I'm trying to like think through this example in my head. Maybe the reason why setting the prices and bumping them may not work is because specifically where Clemson is, right, is like saying like, should you be doubling, tripling, quadrupling the rates? You're not even really quite sure at that moment in time. And then what happens if a guest books that property and it's a different game? Someone's like, I'm sure, I heard through the grapevine this is when this game's gonna be. Setting those owner expectations, not owner expectations, but traveler expectations. How do you, speaking of owner expectations, Lee and Jill, how do y'all set that expectation with your owner, having that calendar blocked out and them not seeing it right away? Because I can only imagine it's not like the football schedule comes out and then the pricing is out, right? Y'all have to do some work to do.
Yeah, we pretty much we'll understand like what our baseline will probably be for the season, depending on what the entire season is kind of looking like. And then we'll go in and specifically for certain games that may bring crowds from farther out or larger groups, we'll set those higher as well.
Do y'all have to often drop the rates closer to the event, or it's like really like no matter what you guys putting in there, it's booking?
That's kind of a question I wanted to ask Jordan too, is do you ever kind of see spikes in demand as you go toward the event, or is there ever kind of a scarcity involved when you get closer to the event, and then prices could go up? So that's kind of one of our worries too. If we go, not high enough at first, and maybe we could have got more later, or maybe some extra excitement rolls in on a certain game, or they designate that game as homecoming, and all of a sudden, that's a big draw, and we missed that one or something. So that's something we've been curious about, kind of setting those rates too early and then maybe missing out on something, leaving money on the table.
Should we be talking to the schools about letting us know ahead of time?
You can find that person, let us know.
I will. Jordan, yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
So I think it depends partially like on the size of the unit, right? So a lot of the times, like smaller units, they're gonna book. You can still get those really like high premium rates, like closer to the date.
They have a shorter booking window. People are kind of
Yeah.
booking a little bit later and last minute on those.
Right. And even with the pandemic, like it's changed the booking window completely. So like even larger properties now, like the booking window is definitely shortened. So I like to what I call stay strong, and just like kind of hold my ground when it comes to pricing and keeping those premiums until like we're really like a lot closer to the date, especially for like smaller homes. And
Yeah.
so smaller homes, like say within like 2 months time, like they actually still like really book. Larger homes, they're booking out usually like during non-pandemic times, they're booking out further. So, but yeah, the pandemic has definitely shortened the booking curve for everything. And then you still don't know when those games are going to drop. So that adds even more fun.
And then the vice versa part of this, right? Like, I'd be interested to hear what both of you have to say. Like, we're talking about dropping rates when we get closer. What if the demand's higher than we thought it was going to be, right? Are you ever increasing rates? Like closer to it? Like, you're like, oh man, like these things are booking up. Let's go in and actually we could get a little bit more for money.
In larger portfolios, like if I notice that like things are just booking out too quickly, like you got to jack up those rates because you don't want to leave that money on the table. Personally, and it works.
Yeah, that's what I would say too. If we've noticed that our portfolios we're down to one or two properties for certain weekends, we might kind of do a property specific bump up on those weekends for sure. So noticing
Nice.
our portfolio getting small and kind of saying there must be something going on with that game and kind of bumping those last ones up for sure.
Right. And you're going to hear everyone in the vacation rental industry say, and especially us, there's no set it and forget it approach whenever it comes to pricing. And this is really holds extremely true with what we're talking about today. Whenever it comes to events, there's no like this is what somebody paid last year. If event didn't happen on this weekend, there's not really that you can see the historical data, but that's not going to pertain to exactly what's happening this time of year, especially today when we are still very much in a pandemic and what's happening, what's going on with all this pricing. And I think we have to keep a much bigger eye than we thought that we would have to, because we were even talking about, let's take the, pandemic. We're considering the pandemic, right? So we have the historicals that are coming in. We are assuming the demand that we're going to start seeing in the fall, right? Now we have vaccinations rolling out. We have people still working virtually. We have pent up demand, people planning for their summer who didn't have a summer last year, or just because their kids are about to be out of school and everyone wants to get out of their house or seeing the same things. So you really, honestly, it's really hard to gauge if you have to look forward and figure out the best way to look forward. Is it blocking and determining as it go? Don't be afraid to keep increasing your rates if you're booking too fast. There's so many factors that go in there. So this was whenever we were talking about how you guys determine your rates down in Clemson, I was still so shocked by this because we always have this thing in our vacation rental world is vacation rentals versus hotels. I know we don't want it to happen, but it's continuously happened. Lee, tell me how you figure out your pricing.
Yeah, so it's kind of a neat thing. So our market is really this neat kind of one-off market where we have this town that's only 16,000 people normally. It's like the 25th in population for South Carolina. But then on a game day, over 200,000 people basically visit us, and 100,000 in the stadium, another 100,000 tailgating outside of the stadium. So it becomes the third biggest city in South Carolina on that day. So everything resource-wise is just tapped out to the limits, police and just everything. And that includes our hotels as well. So we're seeing people booking up hotels and staying 40 miles away and traveling what equates to 13 hours in the car sitting in traffic for those times. So they'll spend a whole day in their car just wasting, gas and time. And it really takes away from the experience. So our guests are paying for that experience to stay near campus, walk downtown and enjoy the game that way. So it's kind of interesting that we watch those Clemson hotel prices as well, because they've been doing it for years and years and they're kind of the experts in the area. So we've kind of been able to look at their kind of pricing and their demand and how their inventory and how much is left and what hotels are selling out and what rates they're selling out for. And we're able to just look on kind of those pricing websites, your typical ones that you'll see that customers are shopping, and we can kind of keep an eye on that. And that'll tell us kind of what weekends and what guests are paying for. And our properties, we're going to go into those properties. We're going to look at kind of an opportunity cost of how many properties those are, or how many bedrooms those are going to kind of take the place of hotel wise. So we can look at kind of the decisions that our guests are making when they're making a decision to book with us versus a hotel.
It's still floored by all that. So hotels are like basically driving their pricing, and it makes sense, right? I mean, I love the strategy of like how many hotels can fit in this room. What is the proximity of my vacation rental versus this hotel room? And that's what's helping with the pricing. To take that one step further, Clemson Vacation Rentals doesn't have to do this, but I said, are you actually in your marketing saying like, hey, like this takes the place of 3 hotel rooms? You may see pricing at an average ADR of 100 for a hotel room. The reason mine's 300 is because it actually could fit 3 hotel rooms in there. They don't have to do this because the demand is so high. They're not worried about being seen. But think about that whenever it does come to event pricing. If somebody's coming, events in your area, what travelers are you attracting? Are you attracting families? Are you attracting groups of people? I obviously cannot wait to go to a music festival and concert because it's all I can think about in my head. But when I used to travel pre-kids for music festivals, I could have a group of 10 friends going together, right? And it would be much more cheaper cheaper or more convenient, more space for us to be in a vacation rental. So think about that. If your demand isn't there, if you aren't sure the demand is there, using that in your marketing and your listing optimization, your website anyway, letting people know that that how you are comparable to a hotel. Jordan, do you ever use hotel data to drive event pricing
When I
or
absolutely
determine?
have to. So like there are markets like just like Clemson, like it just you have nothing else
You have
and
to.
you have to. There's like you got to get data from somewhere and you got to look at what is the market doing. And in y'all's case, like the market also includes like hotels and there's just that's what you got to compare off of. So yeah, for smaller locales, I will look at hotels.
Right. You have to know your event, right?
Right.
Know your market. And if your market is consistent of a lot of hotels, I mean, I think that's really a way that you need to go. And then, and know what the crowd, like we were just saying, the crowd that was bringing in. Like don't be afraid to really do that research and to really know what's going on and to think outside of the box, right? I don't think that anyone like knocked at your front door, Lee, and was like, this is how you need to figure out your pricing. You have to use your resources that were there.
Yeah, it was kind of all that was available. Clemson didn't allow short-term rentals until 2016, so it was kind of this new market for everybody. We were doing long-term rentals at a couple properties before that, and kind of rolled the dice and said, let's try this out. So we were kind of one of the first movers on this to a certain extent. There were probably people doing it, when it was illegal and that kind of thing. But we were kind of one of the first ones, kind of to establish a process and kind of start this as a business in the area.
Yeah.
It
Do it the right way. So yeah, I was trying to think of we went in a couple different ways whenever we were talking about this, but I think that Jordan, I think being that you are the revenue analyst, can you dive into some demand KPIs that you should be looking at whenever you have to determine your revenue management strategy in terms of events?
So first and foremost, like I look at 2020 and then I discard 2020. No, so I look at 2020 and I look at 2019. So I'm looking, and I think it's good practice probably to always be looking 2 years back. And it's okay to have this one-off weird year looking back. Actually, there are a lot of like PMs out there that actually did really well in 2020, especially those that weren't in urban locales. So you shouldn't just disregard that data. Some of them actually did better than they did in 2019, which to me is bonkers, but I'm so happy for them. So look at that. Look at occupants. So I look at three things: average daily rate, adjusted revenue, RevPAR, so revenue per available night or rental, depending on, it's the same thing. And then so adjusted occupancy, yeah. So those three things: ADR, occupancy, RevPAR. And then I'm just going like week by week and event by event, day by day, and saying, okay, where were we at in 2020? Where were we at in 2019 for this rental or a comparable rental if that one doesn't have any historical data? Just looking and saying, okay, so this is where we're at. This is your goal. This is what you want to beat. And usually you can beat it, especially if you know months ahead of time, because you price those out. And I know that you don't always have you don't always know what event's coming up, or you do know what event's coming up, but you don't know when it's going to happen. In particular. So I go on the safe side. I assume it's going to be an event and I price it comparably, preferably just add a little bit up to where your max was before, and see if it happens, because a lot of the times like you'll get a booking and you'll get a happy guest and they'll be really excited to go to that event. And yeah, so like the pandemic is, I'm not going to say it's going to be over anytime soon, but like things are changing. People are booking. I'm going to go and take a vacation finally. I bet you all are too. So let's go do that. Let's go have some fun, and let's price appropriately for it.
Right, totally. I mean, I was talking to a property manager in Iceland this morning, right? And they now can, as of May 1st, you can go there if you have a vaccine, as long as you get there and you take a test as soon as you get there. And their concerts and festivals and like different things coming up. So they are like excited to get starting with their strategy, because events and everything is coming back. I think Jordan really brings out a really great point. I think there's two ways, not two ways to look at this, but different ways. Like, don't throw 2020 out of the window all the time. Like, I think there's two different worlds of that. Clemson Vacation Rentals, you didn't have football games last year, right? So in your case, you guys luckily were able to fill a lot of your, your fill your occupancy with, you said like moms and dads, parents. I couldn't think of the word parents. Parents coming to the university, to see their kids and give them home cooked meals and do all of those things. But you can't technically drive your pricing off of it all at 2020, right? Because there was no event going on. But I think all these other markets, like these markets that have seen 3 to 4 times the revenue that they saw in other years, like especially in destination markets. I think that it's very important for you to look at maybe on a week, look at the week that the event was supposed to be, right? And then see what were your KPIs, your ADR, and your pricing for that week during 2020, and how was it driven, and then add on what your normal occupancy. This is going to be some math going in there, right? But your normal occupancy would be for if an event would have happened at that time, keeping your bumping your rates up. I think that would be very important and a good strategy for you to do, because I think people are going to go, and obviously people still want to go to these locations. If there's an event there, it's going to drive more, or people were already going to go. When it's like a discretionary vacation pricing, keep bumping them up is obviously what the trend of every one of these webinars has been. With that, what am I missing right now? I'm like looking at our.
One thing I'd like to mention is that like not every property manager or homeowner out there on Vrbo or Airbnb is really caught onto this trend. So like,
that is a great point.
So you're going to be looking and you're going to go, oh my God, this guy is priced half as much as I am. But then you look at their calendar and you're like, this person has no availability.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's basically gone like all year. And I've seen this time and time again. So don't get skittish is kind of what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that person does have they got a lot of bookings, but they left money on the table.
Right.
You don't want to be booked out 100%, but they are. But and you can see their pricing. Their pricing, it's pretty darn low. And back during the beginning stages of this pandemic, people dropped their pricing super low because they couldn't get any bookings because everyone was afraid to move. And in some places it's still like that. Well, not really in the US, but elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be proactive. You have to be looking at your markets. You have to be looking at your competition, but also be okay being a little above price. Let them take that $500 booking. You can get that $1,000 booking.
Right. That's exactly, a great segue. Be aware, utilize your resources, but be aware of your resources, right? I think that, a great example of using resources is Clemson using the hotels, right? If you were to use all the owners in the area, those owners aren't looking in there and doing what the pricing, you would be leaving so much money on the table. So you're using the resources there for you. Pricing can be overwhelming. As it is today, back in, when I started in the vacation rental industry 9 years ago, you could set your rates and put them in a magazine and send them out and never change them again. You cannot do that anymore. And especially when it comes to events, you have to have all eyes on it. How often are you guys looking at it a week, Clemson?
Circle back on that. One of the things that I think is really important in our market is we do have owners that will actually rent out their personal homes, not us specifically, but we have people in the area who rent out their personal homes for football games. So set their prices so high that it basically pays for the family vacation. So we do have these one-off ones where they'll set $2,500 a night or something. And maybe it's not going to book at that, but that also comes back into managing our owners' expectations too, because they'll get on VRBO and they'll go kind of price shopping and window shopping, and they'll say, this house that doesn't look as good as mine is going for $2,500 a night. Why can't I be priced there? So it's kind of managing these owner expectations too, and kind of figuring out on both sides of things, even on the high side and the low side. It's tough to kind of gauge that.
Right. What is your response when somebody says something like that?
It's tough because you have to, kind of reel them in on maybe what their property is and what we see historically on other properties and what they've rented for. But it's tough to kind of talk to people about their personal homes, and if they think it should be rented higher, we never want to leave money on the table for them for sure. So we usually tell them that price for sure, and we have enough months, 4 or 5 months to try to book that property. So we'll try that for a month or two, and then we can always discount, like Jordan was saying. We can come down and find out where the market kind of
And that is revenue management. Right. And that's the thing, us working better on owner expectations in this industry as a whole, but owner education on understanding why these things are so popular and why revenue management is, such a skill and why it needs to be done. And having these talks with your owners, right? You have both of those fields like, hey, yeah, this person's that. We are, you have to be confident and trusting in how you make your decision. I am setting your prices based on database decisions and what we see the market's doing. I'm not quite sure who owner down the road's doing, but I can tell you that number is not based on the data I'm using, and this is the data I'm using. Like, like that's kind of like what it comes down to. And the same thing when they're like, oh my gosh, like look all these my neighbors' calendars booked. Like, well, ask them what is it booked for, and look what we're projecting it to be.
Yeah. Teaching about the booking window too, I think is important. That helps out too, and kind of managing those expectations.
It is, right? The booking window. And I remember whenever, whenever back in my home away days, just kind of like just breaking down simple math, with owners or, it's like everyone, you don't know what you don't know. Right. And saying like, I know that you want to book up fast, but if you increase your rates a little bit and your occupancy and letting them know that how this works, but it takes time, it can be overwhelming. And that's where, having like software capabilities or consultants and, not to plug rented, but, revenue management resources of people where this is their job and their passion to do it every single day while you're doing something else can be there to assist you. So we have 2 minutes left, and I want to give everyone the opportunity. Is there any last minute advice, Jill and Lee, that you want to give to anyone when it comes to event pricing or anything?
I always say just shoot for the stars, and then
I love it.
Idea of how, like in July, we're going to reduce it to this rate and then see what happens, and just be patient. Understand your booking windows, understand that right now with the pandemic, booking windows are kind of completely different, I'm finding. But just be patient.
You can always come down, but you can't go up after someone's booked.
Ask somebody for more money.
You can always go down. And I love that. Shoot for the stars. I think that's really been the trend that we've been telling people about lately. And Jordan, what about you?
I'm definitely on board with that. Don't be afraid to reach for the stars. Totally. That's where I'm at today too. And just know that we're going to come back stronger, and like people are ready. They're ready. I am going to take a vacation, and so are you.
Yeah, so, exactly. The vacations
with that
are
expectation, happening. We're all kind of having like a you only live once moment after the pandemic. So let's go and let's go on those dream vacations.
We've been hearing what the revenge travel that's coming up and everything like that. But yeah, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Anyone who's watching the recording or attending us today, if you have any more questions about event pricing and specifics to football, I can introduce you guys to Jill and Lee from Clemson. They're absolutely amazing. We're so happy that we were able to spend this time with them. Jordan, our revenue analyst, we're always happy to do just a free talk with anyone to give to see what questions you have with us. Don't forget to join us next week. Next week we're actually going to be talking about coaching your reservationists and your call center teams to try and close more deals and create more ROI. And we have some exciting guests that are going to be there with us. So again, thank you all so much for joining me today, and have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye.